Good afternoon, and welcome to Straight Talking with Kelly, where real conversations happen. This is where you'll meet the most intelligent, talented, and creative people who come to share tips, resources, and knowledge on various topics. My guests come from many industries that include health and wellness, culinary arts, fashion, music, education, community advocates, and so much more. Join me and my guest, Walter Brown Jr. He is the principal at WB Lending Solutions, WB Strategies, and chairperson of the Urban Financial Services Coalition National Multiple Strategies Working Committee. Welcome, Walter.
Thank you, Kelly. Glad to be here.
It's a pleasure having you. It's a pleasure. But Walter, before we start talking about financial literacy and family unity, I'd like to read a little bit of your bio, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay. So Walter grew up in San Francisco's Hunters Point neighborhood and attended Lowell High School and Golden Gate University. He is the principal at WB Lending Solutions, WB Strategies, where they deliver holistic counseling service to create strategic and profitable improvements to your financial picture. Walter has lectured at various institutions, including the California Legislative Black Caucus, U.S. Congress and the White House. He also writes articles on financial subject matters for CNBC News, the East Bay Times, San Jose Mercury News, and other. He likes to spend his time as a devoted community service volunteer, reading, swimming, hiking, and spending time with them lovely grandchildren. Yeah. Did I get that right?
You got it right.
All right. All right. So Walter, even though I just talked about that you grew up in Hunters Point and whatnot, I still want you to give me a little bit more about your background, where you were born and raised, the schools you attended, and then we'll get into how you ended up with WB Solutions.
Solutions. Okay. I grew up in the projects in Hunters Point in San Francisco. My dad and mom raised me and my sibling sister. I was very thankful to have a family and friends in the community. I had a paper route. One of my first jobs was working for Dr. Carlton Goodlett, the historic Black American in San Francisco, selling the Sun Reporter newspaper on 3rd Street.
Beautiful.
And sold out of Cummins grocery store on Revere, a Black-owned business that gave me the opportunity to start working at age 12, 13. Developed a route, got my little lunch money doing that. Attended Sir Francis Drake Elementary School, and this Black kid didn't know that Sir Francis Drake was actually, he's a slave trader. He that was part of his stock and trade at the time, but we didn't know that. I attended Pelton Junior High, went on to Lowell High School, went into the world of work, went to Golden Gate University later, started a family young, and worked off of 3rd Street, learning, reading and writing programs. It was stunning to me how many people in the Hunters Point Bayview community didn't know how to read, and how they kind of skated by. Just really a stunning and kind of a scary thought for me as I looked at how they had to navigate and figure things out. So reading, teaching reading was one of my first volunteer activities back in 1971, 1972 in the Bayview.
Now, you know what? That's amazing that we didn't cross paths doing that, but I was a little bit later. I used to do programs for the San Francisco Library, and especially Project Read, where I did self-esteem classes for adult, that could not read. And you're right. It was amazing how, this one guy, I said, well, how did you make it through? And he says, oh, I would have friends, tell me what stuff was. They find ways to make it happen. But thank goodness for the Project Read program. But one of the things that I found upsetting about the library's program, they didn't have one for youth, for teenagers.
Wow.
There's no Project Read for teenagers. It was only for adults. And I'm thinking, we got kids going through school that can't read. But anyway, so you saying that just made me think about the time when I actually used to do programs for Project Read.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now, Walter, what was it like being at Lowell? Because I also know I'm a Lowell graduate as well. We didn't have a lot of us there.
You know, Lowell was for me when I left Pelton Junior High. The mantra was go to Woodrow Wilson or go to Mission, because if you go to Lowell, you're going to have trouble there. You know, there's racial problems and so forth.
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily find that to be the case, probably because I was into sports. So I was kind of an athlete that kind of transcended a lot of different things. I found that by reaching, I just kind of refused to be pigeonholed, right?
Yeah. Okay.
You know, so I
Makes
just
sense.
said, okay, I'm going to push out to the white folks. I'm going to push out to the Asians, and it worked for me in that situation. I was a member of the Black Student Union, right? I was very aware of the Black Panthers at that time in the 70s. Their free breakfast program, their mentoring program. They did a lot of things.
Whole lot.
Other than what was publicized.
Oh, absolutely.
Program. So
absolutely.
Yeah, I was involved with that. My experience at Lowell was the faculty was a little different. I think that was one of the things that my father helped me a lot. When I first got into Lowell, I had to catch up. At Pelton, I really wasn't prepared for Lowell. A lot of the concepts that the kids when I first got there knew from Marina, Appos, and other places, I had no concept of authors, math concepts, and I was playing catch up, almost flunked out. I remember going to a back to school night with my dad and mom. Okay. And I had this one particular English teacher. He was a man, always dressed very proper in a tie. I won't name him, but if you were there during those years, you know who he was. And he stood right in front of me and my parents and told my parents, I don't know why your son is here. He's not ready for Lowell. He shouldn't be here.
Oh, wow.
And he said that right in front of me.
Wow.
And my father stepped very closely to him. My father was a Teamster, roughneck. And my father was in a suit and a tie, dressed very well. And he stepped very closely to this teacher and said, I expect that you will make sure that my son passes or you will see me again.
Okay.
And the teacher, his face got red. I passed the class.
Okay. You know what? But what you said was a key point. I had that same kind of experience at Lowell, not really feeling prepared for it because I had just got out here from St. Louis. And
from the Lou.
And Mr. Thomas, who was my teacher over at Roosevelt High, is the one who told my mom, you need to send her to Lowell. We didn't even know what Lowell was. And then I found out years later, Mr. Thomas ended up working at Lowell.
Wow.
Yeah, anyway, it's a wonderful story. So yes, but yeah, so I was like you as well in terms of I had friends with everybody. I knew everybody and I loved everybody. And I had a good time at Lowell, actually. I really did. Now, what I would like to know about you is your college experience. What was that like? And what was your major? What did you major in college?
Business management. I went afterward. I went to corporate America. I went as a volunteer in the community. And so I didn't go to college until later in life. And that's why I went to Golden Gate University.
Okay.
So I went as a business major with business management and information technology as a minor. And so I was one of the old folks in the class. I was probably older than my professor. And as I listened to some of the youngsters talking about, well, I'm in school and I'm at work just to get a paycheck. And I really don't care what the company does. And if it doesn't really seem like it's really right, I don't care. I take my vacations. And I'd have to raise my hand and say that does not settle well with me at all. You have to be a conscious citizen and employee. And so many of the professors would go, I agree with you.
So you could have came up and taught the class, right?
Right. So I had to be very careful, right, to leave the professor with their dignity intact, because there are a lot of things they were teaching that, being a division leader in corporate America, I knew, and I just let them teach.
Yeah. Sometimes that's a hard thing to do, isn't it?
Yes.
So now tell me about WB Lending Solutions and WB Strategies, how it came to be and the services that you offer.
WB Lending Solutions, WB Strategies came out of my 25 years in corporate America. I worked for Fortune 500 companies like Bank of America, the Principal Financial Group, and others. And so working in banks, financial institutions, doing financing for consumers, I saw that there was a lot of information that I could not give to a consumer because I was an employee of the bank. So the consumer might be making a decision to take a product or take a certain step that would be good for the bank, because the bank would be able to make a sale and generate profit, but it wasn't good for the consumer. And so after about 25 years of that, I said, well, I would rather work on the consumer side, using the experience that I have to leverage the consumer's position, advocate for them with these institutions, work with their CPAs and attorneys to help them to maximize their returns. And so during the financial crisis, as an example, when we had so many foreclosures, and in the African-American community, by some statistics, Kelly, we've lost over $1 trillion in our community during that 2008 through 2013 period. And organizations like BlackRock and Goldman Sachs, as you recall, came in and bought houses by the hundreds. And so they took that wealth, and here in the Bay Area, houses in San Francisco that sold for $300,000 during that time, they're worth over $1.5 million now, and they're being held by these equity funds. And so
excuse me, I didn't mean to cut you off, but this is when they start, giving loans to people, and then all of a sudden the people weren't able to pay them and they were able to take their homes?
Correct. And
Wow.
So you recall, we had the financial crisis, the banks like Bank of America, Citibank, US Bank, they almost went out of business, and taxpayer money was used to bail them out.
Wow.
Well, folks like Dianne Feinstein and Barbara Lee, elected officials, they would not have authorized that money to be released had there not been something in it for the consumer, because it was corporate welfare. So the agreement was, and I actually worked and helped writing that legislation back in 2009, that $700 billion package with the Urban Financial Services Coalition as a community advocate. And I saw that really that legislation was really misdirected by the financial institution lobbyists. And so folks got foreclosed on that should not have been foreclosed on.
Wow.
And so I was able to use the experience that I had to stop a number of foreclosures, force banks and mortgage companies to reverse foreclosures that they had executed unlawfully, and did work with the Urban Financial Services Coalition across the country from coast to coast, and letting people know, you might recall that, like here in the Bay Area and across the country, there are great organizations like NACA and various HUD-approved counselors that talk to homeowners to help them to negotiate with lenders to try to work things out. Well, don't forget, Bank of America had to work things out because they were almost out of business. So when it was time for the homeowner to do it, the Urban Financial Services Coalition, and shout out to the national president, Ms. Ola Truelove, out of Kansas City, Missouri, not far from St. Louis.
Okay.
That's where our national president is.
Okay.
We formed a group called the Mortgage Crisis Task Force. And we actually consulted with homeowners who didn't know their rights and they were able to stop the banks from taking their properties. But
Wow.
over $1 trillion in our community, we lost. And so when you look at that and you look at all the cumulative things that we've experienced as a Black community, from slavery, the crack conspiracy, and all the other things that we've experienced,
The
working.
murders, don't leave out the murders, police brutality and whatnot.
Right.
That's just heartbreaking. So if I was a customer, what would some of the services I could get from you?
We would have a conversation about your story. What's your purpose in life?
Okay.
We start that financial literacy discussion. You own a property, you have a bank account, you have a job, you have a 401k, you have automobiles. But what's your purpose?
Mhm.
What do you want to do? Where are you going? Now, do you have a budget? Are you spending consciously? Since 1978, we've gotten into a social media generation where a lot of folks that are out here now who are going to lead corporate America, they're being programmed by social media, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. I see my friend with that new Range Rover. I want one.
Yeah.
And I go out and finance it. The dealer says we can make the payments fit your budget, but we have to take it from 72 months to 84 months. Well, what I don't realize is that I've just doubled the amount of interest.
Right. I was going to say the interest rate. Mhm.
Right. So we're going to talk about good debt. We're going to talk about bad debt. We're going to talk about how long you want to work before you make working optional. We're going to talk about volunteerism. We're going to talk about where your money comes from. Does it come from employment, self-employment, being an investor, or a business owner? So it's about financial literacy. It's also about your budget, your investing, saving 10% long-term, not just spending. One of the things that's happening now, we've got this great employment picture. Now, the employment picture is great for America. You know, it's about 3%, a lot of people employed, but when you go to the Black community, it's over 6% unemployment.
Mhm.
So again, when you look at the Black community, when you look at the numbers, 3% unemployment, US generally, the Black community over 6% unemployment. San Francisco, Bayview, and certain target areas in the Bay Area, it's over 10% unemployment. So we've got a challenge right now. But my point is this: there's a lot of amazing Black youth who are in tech, who are doing great things in work. But as they get raises, they spend their raises. So another thing that I'm going to talk to you about is when you get your raise, don't spend that whole thing.
Okay.
Invest half of it, right? Let's talk about delayed gratification. You know,
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. So you know what, that just leads me to my next question, even though you kind of answered it, but I want you to go a little bit more in depth. It says, I had read this financial literacy article. It was entitled, it was on May 17th by the National Urban League, titled Disparities in the African American Financial Literacy, Serious Problems with the Concept. And so what struck me the most was, you know, the importance of educating our youth. My husband does financial literacy trainings, and he also is targeting youth because that is definitely an area that needs to get a concept. What do you think people are currently thinking about when it comes to improving their financial literacy and financial intelligence? And so because most parents maybe don't really have enough knowledge, how can they teach their children? So then it becomes, for me, the responsibility of the school to have such programs. Is that correct?
well, most people are not thinking about financial literacy, sadly. The schools, most of the financial literacy is not taught in schools, as you know. It's not something that's found very commonly in schools. When we go into schools and do financial literacy outreach at the Urban Financial Services Coalition, we find that teachers want the information more than the students.
Sure.
After
Yeah.
the classes are over, the teachers are saying, hey, I need to talk to you. I've got questions.
Yeah.
We are in a situation where my dad came to the Bay Area in 1945. Black people had a code amongst each other, code of honor. They took care of each other. They understood the importance of saving. They understood the importance of not stealing from each other, for the most part. That code we've lost to a large extent. So when you say, what are we thinking about? We're being programmed by BET, TikTok, and other things to buy the latest bag, take the latest vacation. Summertime, people are looking at the Dominican Republic and other places, how to spend versus how to save.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our grandparents had the saying, some people wear their money on their back. I keep my money in the bank. Mm-hmm. And so we're not thinking about financial literacy. We're playing into the hands of corporations. We're playing into the hands of ultra wealthy investors. Remember the company store? Back in the day, St. Louis, Kansas City, there were small towns where people worked at a plant, and the plant was the life for that whole town. Plant closed, these towns died. But there was a company store where people went and they had a tab and they bought their flour and sugar and everything else.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right? And so sometimes they could not get out of debt to the company store. And then where they lived was a company-owned house. It wasn't their house. So they were pretty much sharecropping. Mm-hmm. We're being put back into that situation. You think about the Bay Area for a moment. We have some, example I think of, the Latino community has what our community had 40 years ago. They live together, they work together, they pool their resources. They can be 8 of them working at McDonald's, but if they're making $2,000 a month, if there's 8 of them, that's $16,000 a month income combined. They will work together. Our parents did that. You can think back.
Yeah.
We these days, again, we're that social media generation. When my kids, when they buy a house, they want 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, 2-car garage, pool if they can get it.
Okay.
Whereas our parents, my dad and mom, we started in the projects. They ended up as millionaires, but they built slowly, delayed gratification. So I don't think we're thinking about financial literacy. I don't think we're being programmed to think about financial literacy. I think the fact that you're bringing this up is very important, and it needs to be done more. I think that the school district, they're going to have to do some real serious retooling to be able to, the school districts to be able to teach financial literacy.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully my husband's program will be a great start for it, one that he's created.
Would love to hear about it, because the schools are teaching people to be employees, not to be entrepreneurs, not to be wealthy, not to be
Just know I teach that. I make sure. I'm also a teacher. I don't know if you know that I teach at City College in the fashion department. I actually teach them how to become image consultants. The culinary program that I started, I teach my young men how to become chefs. Anyway, so I definitely believe in teaching entrepreneurship. So now tell me this, you are a staunch believer in volunteering, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I know you currently serve as the chair of the Urban Financial Service Coalition and the National Multiple Strategies Working Committee. What are the benefits that you've received from volunteering, and would you suggest others to do so?
The benefits that I receive are, number one, is it's good for the soul.
Absolutely.
Right? To be able to give and help other people. I mean, that's just good for us as human social creatures, The other piece that it helps me with is it puts me in conversations that cause me to grow beyond what I would grow, beyond the limits that I would be able to move as principal of WB Lending Solutions. Working with the Urban Financial Services Coalition, if I go into Washington, D.C., into the Congress, and I present my WB Lending Solutions card, they go, so? If I present my Urban Financial Services Coalition card, working in financial literacy, working in helping African-American financial executives to move up the ladder, they want to know what we're thinking. They want to talk to me. So it allows me to engage with legislative aides, with members of Congress, with members of various regulatory committees, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, the Federal Reserve, because they want to know what we think. They want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
It makes me very relevant. It helps me to help community members when they come to me and say, I've got this problem. Well, you know, with your network, the network is valuable. So what you put out, you get back. I find that people who want to volunteer and work with me, when they simply want to have their name on a roster but not do any work, they're really not getting anything back. You get back what you give out.
Look, when you said that, it took me back to my days. I used to be a program director with the American Heart Association. I ran their program, Heart in the Black Community. And one of the things, it was volunteer based. So I had to recruit and train volunteers. I had some phenomenal volunteers. And then I had those ones that would show up just when it was time for an event or certificates to be handed out. And this one time in particular, this lady goes, I don't see my name on the for a certificate. And I said, what's your name? And I said, that's because you haven't showed up.
Bam.
I said, I did tell her, I was very straightforward. I said, you're not getting one. I said, I've never seen you before. I said, but you know what? You're here, make yourself welcome, enjoy the rest of the festivities. And maybe, you know, next time around, you'll really start coming. And she did. You know, she was like, she told me, Miss Kelly, nobody's ever called me out like that. I was just like, well, you met Kelly. You met Kelly. Good. So now, Walter, now I'd like to talk now. We're going to switch segues real quick here and talk more about family and family unity, especially with Father's Day coming around. So how vital is fatherhood for you and now your grandfather? So talk to me about that.
Fatherhood is very important. It's a verb. I mean, it's not a noun, it's a do. It's what you do as a man, particularly in this culture today, with what popular media shows about African-American men not being there, being gone. I mean, that's what's portrayed. You know, I value it. I mean, raising my children, coming home every night, being there for them every day, every night, standing in those gaps when situations happen, be it on 3rd Street or MacArthur Boulevard or wherever we were doing things. Fatherhood is important. You know, fathers, I think, I bring a level of gravitas to a family circle that can't be duplicated. You know, it's something that we've been under attack for, you know, since we were brought here on those slave ships, separated, broken up, mentally deprogrammed, our culture taken away from us, and so on. And even as recently as the 70s, you know, the Reagan-inspired COINTELPRO activity, the police brutality that you mentioned against Black and male and females. Yeah. So it's a big deal, and it's something that we've got to go back to our old ways.
Speaking of which, I believe in this. What have you learned from your parents that you will pass down to your children? What did you learn from your parents that you pass down to your children?
Finish what you start. You know, if you if I was going to do homework, I didn't do anything else till I did that homework. I mean,
Okay.
that was the way it was, and, cause and effect. There are consequences, right? So today, we have this debate about whether there should be consequences or not, or whether things should be allowed to prolong on. I had consequences, right?
Yeah.
I didn't go outside. If I did something, and it didn't happen very often, but if my mother told me, I'm going to tell your dad when he gets home, that was not good for Walter, right?
Okay.
And that only happened twice when and you've got this whole school of thought about corporal punishment and all that. But I believe in that. My grandkids, there's only a couple of times when they ignored me, and the younger one I swatted, and that one looked at me, and the older one said, "Yeah, Papa, I whoop." So that's and on the other hand, you have these conversations with people, and they go, "Well, you could be arrested and so forth." And at that point, you go, "Okay, when the police come in, okay, I'm dealing with this now at my house. If I don't deal with this in the house, you're going to be chasing them down the street."
Okay, real truth. And we see it every day.
Right? So
Every day.
that's how I'm just plain and simple. We're going to deal with it here. And if you're my child. And on the other hand, it also means protecting your child. I had a situation with one of my children who was arrested by the police on false charges.
Oh, wow.
Newspaper story and the whole bit. I advocated for him, but not only did I advocate for him, because when I went to court, the judge said, "I'm not going to hear from you. I know you wrote me a letter and you cannot speak." And I told the attorneys, I said, "Okay, I'm going to the California Supreme Court for malpractice. I'm going to the governor's office, and I'm going to the county board of county supervisors." They snapped to really quickly. So fathers, not just being, we've got to be aware. We've got to be knowledgeable citizens. We've got to read. We've got to be responsible. I just can't be sitting down drinking Hennessy all day. I got to be about something.
Okay. So now tell me this, what happy family memory will you treasure forever?
See, you didn't tell me about that question. The happy family member I will remember will be driving my family to Yosemite National Valley and riding up that road through Mariposa along the stream and them coming out of the city and never seeing fresh water coming out, and us getting out and my boys going down and putting their hands in that cold snow runoff, and that was a fun memory.
Oh, and El Capitan, seeing those wonderful that was one of our hangout spots with our daughter as well. We loved Yosemite. I love being around those trees, just all of it.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that's a beautiful memory, actually. Now I want to switch gears again. And so now I would like to ask you to name 3 people that have inspired you.
My father.
Okay.
He was the best man in my wedding. So that would be one. See, you didn't tell me about this question either.
That's the beauty of an interview, right? That's the beauty of an interview. It's like, you don't know what I'm going to ask.
Dr. Martin Luther King, visionary. He had his flaws, but he was an absolute visionary. Jesus Christ is another one. And he's not the Jesus Christ as portrayed in the English and French portraits with blonde hair and so forth. He was out of the Middle East. So those
Did he have the woolly hair?
Say again?
He had the woolly hair?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That would be a third. And then Fourth would be my uncle, another strong person in my life. They called him Uncle Buster because he would bust folks up. So I have a lot of strong men in my family.
So you got your father, Dr. Martin Luther King, Jesus Christ, and Uncle Buster. I asked for three, but Uncle Buster got kind of squoze in there, and that's okay.
He's got to be in there.
He got to be in there.
His saying was, think for yourself.
Absolutely. So now, what would your 9-year-old Walter say to the grown man Walter today?
What would my 9-year-old Walter say to
the grown man Walter today? What would he say to you?
Go for it. Okay. Don't stop.
Okay.
Don't stop.
Mm-hmm. All right. So now, Walter, before we end this wonderful, wonderful session, would you like to leave some parting words to the audience and then tell us what you have coming up next?
Parting words would be, if I am not for myself, who will be? If I am only for myself, what kind of person am I? And if not now, when? And those are words made famous by an old Jewish rabbi, Hillel. And so those would be my parting words. Coming up next, I'm going to be working with the Urban Financial Services Coalition on our annual Economic Strategic Summit. It'll be the 15th one that we've done. With COVID, things kind of got broken up, but this economic summit is a nexus. We bring together people from the community. We bring together leaders in politics and financial services. We bring together investors to share ideas, to make new friends, to find employees, to find business partners, give entry-level people a chance to meet, to get past that internet portal where you have to apply for a job, to meet the decision makers, and to talk about what's coming up in the next 12 months in the Bay Area and nationally. Okay. And so will it be your summit, where will it take place? Typically, we do it on California Street in San Francisco. This one will probably be, with COVID, we'll probably do it Zoom. We've had folks in New York and Los Angeles request to be part of it. And so we're looking at taking it national. Now, this is something that I started along with one of my mentors, Ms. Demita Barbie out of San Francisco, Mr. Robert Schaffner, who was founder of the San Francisco chapter of the Urban Financial Services Coalition. He's also an Omega. And Mr. Stephen Moore, who was the first vice president with Co-America Bank, along with your boy, Otis Watson. Okay. Oh, that'd be, you know, I got to interview him now. There's no way I'm not going to be able to interview him. And I'm looking forward to it, actually. He was on my list. He just doesn't know it. I'll hold him for him while you work him over. Oh yeah, no, it's going to be wonderful because he and I have a really, really rich history in terms of how he actually helped me. So that'll be a pleasure to be able to hear him speak. Now, I would actually like to thank you for being a guest. Okay, I'm trying to get back to us. Well, before you thank me, let me commend you on creating this platform. Okay, I've seen the folks you've interviewed. I've seen the things you've talked about. I didn't get a chance to talk too much about what Third and Palouse was in San Francisco back in the day, movie theater, stores, banks, and all that. We have to get back to our old ways. Yeah. And so you memorializing this information is important for my kids and my grandkids. So thank you for doing that. And has you. Oh, that was sweet. Thank you. Thank you very much. No, it's been a pleasure. And like I said, when I think about all of the people I know
And because I have worked in so many different industries and because I am a networker, I will never run out of people to interview. There's always somebody out there.
And the last thing is, you are drawing a line in the sand. Okay, you're taking a stand on presenting these stories, on creating this forum. And that's what all of us have to do. We have to draw a line in the sand and say, this is who I am. I'm standing up to be counted. I'm not going to hide in the shadows. And hats off to you, Kelly.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. So thank you for being a guest. And
You're
we'll
welcome.
definitely have to have you come back as you get closer to your summit so we can make sure that people get the information about that. And to my guest, thank you so much for listening to Straight Talking with Kelly, where real conversations happen. Please make sure you subscribe, like, share, and guess what? You could be my next guest.